Okay, now we are going to look at the second story from Flamingo textbook, and this is called Lost Spring, written by Anis Jung. Okay, Anis Jung was born in Rourkela and she spent a lot of time in Hyderabad, also was educated in the United States of America. Her parents were writers. So this particular note will give you an idea about what kind of a person Anis Jung is, and so that it's easier for you to relate to what she has essentially written about. Now, these are two stories of two people. Okay, so we will go through it one by one. So the first one is about a garbage collector called Sahib, who says his name is Sahib. Now, what are these stories about? Let's read that, understand that before we get into it, so that you will find it easy to understand. Now, these are two stories which analyze poverty in India. Okay, poverty in India, one in a big city like Delhi, the other in a small town in Uttar Pradesh. So also talking about traditions which kind of condemn the children. Both are about children, right? So it will also give you an idea why you are so privileged, frankly speaking. You guys are actually privileged to kind of belong to a family which can afford to get you educated, unlike these two boys. Okay, so children belonging to a particular strata of society tend to get exploited. They get pushed into child labor. They really have no way to kind of ensure that they can parachute themselves and make a better living for themselves. Okay, so this is why it is called Lost Spring and Stories of Stolen Childhood. Stolen childhood, according to me, is a very powerful phrase because it kind of sets the context. Because the society has stolen something. The society has stolen something. We have stolen something from these children which they deserve to get. The childhood that they deserve to get, we have stolen from them. So stories of stolen childhood. Okay, so let's get started with the first one. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dump of my neighborhood. There are two words here which I want to highlight. Encounter generally is used in a more rough sense. Police और नक्सलियों के बीच में encounter हुआ in which two Naxals were killed. So it's generally used in a more rough sense in the way we use it these days. Okay, so she's not used the word meet. She could have used the word meet. I ask Sahib, whom I meet every morning. But encounter has a sense of a roughness, which is what she wants to probably make you feel in this particular story. She wants to highlight the roughness of the life that Sahib leads. Scrounge means to get things without buying them. Okay, he's not buying, he's kind of looking through the garbage which does not belong to him, which is the leftover and what people have thrown, have kind of discarded, and there he's trying to find gold. Okay, why is she saying scrounging for gold? What does this phrase mean? And this is something, if you get it as a long question and answer, you need to know about the backdrop, because their livelihood depends on it. For them, this is sona. For them, the garbage is gold. What we throw out is something which is of no use to us, which is of no value to us. But for the garbage picker, the rag picker, it is gold for that boy because it is of value to him. So it kind of highlights the two ends of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is people like you and me who throw out things because they are of no more any use to us. But the other end of the spectrum is people who try to get something out of that leftover, that throwaway stuff, and find value in it. For them, that becomes like gold. It's not like they're not looking for gold jewelry. ऐसा नहीं कि आपने सोने के जवाहरात उसमें डाल दिए. But it is essentially referring in a metaphorical sense, scrounging for gold. So garbage has those kind of two different meanings. I hope you have understood it so that you will find it easy to express it in your answers. Sahib left his home long ago. Okay. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. So he actually comes from Bangladesh. His home is not even a distant memory, which means that he has no memory of his home back home in Dhaka. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes, his mother tells him. So what his mother has told him is all that he knows about his home back in Dhaka in Bangladesh. That's why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Okay. So gold is a major element as far as the introduction to this story goes. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. Glibly is to use words in a clever way but without being sincere. I say, Arey, you must study, without meaning anything. What is it to study? What to study? How to study? Right? Where to study? What resources to use? If I don't take care of that, for me to say, Jaake padho, doesn't mean anything. I don't take responsibility. I'm just saying time pass ke liye, ऐसी, बोलने के वास्ते के लिए, I just say something like that. It doesn't mean much. So glibly is used in that sense. So she's saying that she immediately realizes that when I say go to school, it is a hollow advice because I am not making any effort to ensure how will he go to school, where will he go to school, okay, how, what are the resources with which he will go to school. She's not kind of taking responsibility for any of that, but generally giving, you must all work hard. It's like that. Samjhe. There is no school in my neighborhood when they build one, I will go. So he's also smart. He says, मेरे आस पड़ोस में कोई school नहीं है. There is no school in my area, but when they build one, I will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. So she's making a joke of it, but for him, it's not a joke. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me saying, is your school ready? He's taking it seriously. He's saying, is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. So she never meant that promise. She was only, as it says out here, half joking. She's meant it half in jest. So, but that boy has taken it very seriously. So he comes and saying, school ready ho gaya kya? Can I come and join? So she says, well, a school takes longer than that. It cannot just be built like that. Whereas it can be. In today's day and age, all you need is a camera. You don't even need a smart board. A person who has the willingness to teach, you can actually do that. Great. It takes, and you can connect to students from all parts of the country like we at SWS too. It takes longer to build a school. I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant, but promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Now, this is an important phrase. Let me just highlight it for you so that it's easier. What does it mean? Now, promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Bleak because there is no hope for him. Bleak matlab very dim. There is no hope for him in this particular world. For Sahib, the author wants to say that many people make such similar hollow and insincere promises to Sahib, but never keep them. So this also, in that sense, is similar. She said, go to school. If I build a school, I will take you. So where is the school? Well, obviously, she never meant it that she will actually build a school for this boy or boys like him. After months of knowing him, I asked him his name. Now, this is very important. That surprisingly, it takes many months of knowing, after which only she asks him his name. Otherwise, in the first meeting, if not the first meeting, at least the second or the third meeting, you will ask the person the name. But this is a little strange. It shows that there is not a very great connect, at least to begin with, between the author and Sahib. So it takes many months actually to do that. So also perhaps it may mean that it's not very easy to make friends with. Maybe he's an introvert, which doesn't come through the way he comes and says school ban gaya and all that. But it's a little strange. She says that after months of knowing him only, I asked him his name. Okay, Sahib-e-Alam. It almost sounds very royal in a very Mughal kind of sense. He announces. Look at the choice of words. Because Sahib-e-Alam also has a bit of, jahan pana padhar rahe hain kind of thing they would say. So he announces. She's not saying he says or he said. Announces has a sense of pride in his name. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, he would have had a hard time believing it, because there is nothing about his life which indicates that he could be the Lord of the universe, right? Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys. Barefoot means without wearing any shoes, who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. So they are only for a limited period of time. They are seen on the streets. Where they go after that, no one knows. Over the months, I have come to recognize each one of them. So she now knows many of those barefoot boys. Now, army of barefoot boys is like, they're nameless and shoeless. She does not mention the name of any of the other boys, though she now says, I can recognize each one of them, but she doesn't name any of them. Army of boys means it's almost like a collective. There is no sense of individuality that she's associating with each one of those boys, because each one of those boys will have a story, but she chooses to tell the story of Sahib, and he's kind of representative of the entire group of army of barefoot boys. Okay, so like the morning birds, how are the morning birds? She makes a comparison to the who appear like in the morning birds. The morning birds all go together, right? Where one goes, the morning birds, if you see in the morning sky, agar subah jaldi uthte ho to, they'll all move around together, right? Even in the evening for that matter, right? So there is no individual identity. You cannot say, okay, bird number 5, 10, 15. No, they all go together, right? So, and by afternoon, you wouldn't see them in the afternoon sky, right? Afternoon sky, you wouldn't see those kind of groups. So by afternoon, they don't exist. So they exist only for a limited period in the morning hours. Okay. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. So the author also betrays it. She also kind of displays and shows a certain sense of ignorance about the kind of life these boys lead. Why aren't you wearing chappals? As though she wouldn't know the kind of life that these people lead. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. Okay, so he's kind of giving a very matter-of-fact kind of answer. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another, who is wearing shoes that do not match, So they are of different kind of people and they don't kind of match, maybe in terms of size or maybe in terms of color or maybe in terms of shape also. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet, he tries to kind of hide the feet like that. And when I comment, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy. So this reflects the aspiration. I want shoes. You would have seen those kind of boys. I don't know. I mean, I have reported a lot from rural India, semi-urban India. You see a lot of these small boys and girls, very aspirational, who come and gather around you and they want different kinds of things. They will go and touch the car. They will be very fascinated by small things. They will be fascinated by the camera, the mic and stuff like that. So it's that kind of an atmosphere. Anyone new, they gather around. So he says, I want shoes. Says a third boy who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation, right? So she says that, people generally don't wear shoes. I want shoes is also with the hope that maybe the author will arrange one pair for that boy. Okay. It is with that hope that he makes that kind of a demand. Now, yeah. So she is now talking about the tradition of staying barefoot in many cities in India. If this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Perpetual means a permanent state of poverty, right? So that if you say that, people generally stay barefoot, it kind of to cover up the fact that you are poor, you cannot afford to buy shoes. I remember a story, a man from Udupi. Udupi is in the coastal part of Karnataka, near Mangalore. It's a little north of Mangalore. There's a famous Sri Krishna temple out there. Once told me, as a young boy, he would go to school. It's near Manipal. If you would be probably more familiar with Manipal. Once told me, as a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited this town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. Desolation means, nobody around. Okay. In the backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs, a young boy dressed in grey uniform wearing socks. So earlier there used to be somebody who would pray to get shoes, but now there is a young boy. So there has been progress. So the young boy dressed in grey uniform wearing socks and shoes arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remained shoeless. So she's making the contrast that there was this priest at that point in time. He made a wish that I should get shoes, I should have shoes all my life. And now, when she visited Udupi after 30 years, she saw that the son, the young boy, was wearing shoes and socks. Okay, he was going to school. So there had been progress. So there had been a certain amount of progress. And she's contrasting that with the rag pickers in her city of Delhi, where they still remained shoeless. So shoe is seen as a sign of upward mobility. Please note down this phrase. Let me write it down so that you understand it. Upward mobility. I hope it is showing on screen. Yeah, upward mobility. Okay, looking at, okay, ye ho gaya. My acquaintance with the barefoot. So shoes are seen as a sign of, that you have arrived in the sense that you are someone to matter. Shoes bhi pehante ho, so there is something respectable about it. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. What does it mean? Acquaintance means knowing. He is my friend is not the same as saying he is my acquaintance. Acquaintance means you just know them. Naam malum hai, you generally have a vague idea. They're not your friends. Friendship is something which is deeper, right? So there is a difference between friend and acquaintance. So she's still calling them an acquaintance. She's not friends with them, though she kind of recognizes each one of them. Hai na? So my acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri. Now Simapuri is on the periphery. Periphery means on the outskirts. Okay. And she's saying that so even if you have to analyze this particular paragraph and sentence, it means that the rag pickers are not the insiders of Delhi. They're on the periphery. And the city would probably never accept them because they are there only to clear your garbage. We will not accept them. We, the upper class, that whole, wo ek rehta hai na ki, oh, we will not do that. It's a very negative kind of a mindset that many people have, that, we will not this thing with the rag pickers. But they are also an integral part of your overall civic system. If your rag pickers were not there, just imagine the city will be a garbage dump. You need them to clear the garbage, right? But yet you will not accept them. That shows what? That shows the hypocrisy of the so-called middle class and upper middle class people in any city, be it Delhi or any other city in the country. So they're not seen as the insiders, which is why they live on the periphery of Delhi. Periphery means the outskirts of Delhi, and Simapuri is one such locality, right? So in terms of the life they lead, Delhi is known as an affluent city, as a very well-off city, right? But the life of these people is not well-off or affluent in any way. The people who live in Simapuri, the rag pickers. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. 1971 is when the Bangladesh war was fought and East Pakistan became Bangladesh, right? So many of these people who left at that time and they came to Delhi, these are people. Squatters means a person who lives in an empty building without the permission of the owner. So they may just forcibly occupy any property. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it's no longer empty. So at that time when they started occupying it in 1971, it was kind of an empty kind of place. But now it is pretty much crowded. In structures of mud. Now this paragraph is important because it gives you a sense of the life that these people lead. In structures of mud with two roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage or running water, which means they have no civic amenities to speak of. So they live in absolute dirt and muck out there. Live 10,000 rag pickers. 10,000 rag pickers us jagah par rehte hain. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. Okay, they have no identity, without permits. They don't have any kind of, citizenship which says that you are an Indian citizen because they've all come from Bangladesh. But with ration cards that get their names on voters list, but the politicians will get their names on the voter card so that they can vote for them. So it becomes like a vote bank. Okay. And it also enables them to buy food grain, the ration card. food is the most important, food is more important for survival than an identity. Now this is a very powerful line. तुम क्या हो उसकी उससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता, because food is more important. So a ration card in that sense becomes more important. Of course उस टाइम पे आधार कार्ड नहीं था, but a ration card becomes more important than an Aadhaar card. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. So the ladies say that, the fields in Bangladesh near Dhaka did not give us any food grain. Here at least we get food grain. Okay, that's what is more important at the end of the day. If we can feed our families, say a group of women in tattered saris, that is their saris which are torn, which is not in good condition. When I ask them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers, wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become their transit homes. So it almost becomes very nomadic, very primitive, that they move from one place to another wherever they can get food or some kind of livelihood. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. So every day it's almost like Darwin's theory. It's the survival of the fittest. Somehow or the other, they need to survive. It's not about leading a life. Please remember again, just like I told you the difference between friend and acquaintance, there's a difference between living a life and survival. Living a life is to do something good with your life, to progress. Surviving is a day-to-day existence. You survive on Monday. If you survive on Tuesday, then on Wednesday. It's like surviving every 24 hours, which is not a very positive way of looking at life, right? But that's how life is for many of these rag pickers and squatters from Bangladesh. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. These two lines, very important. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. It is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. Why is this being said? 10,000 rag pickers, they live without any of the basic facilities. Okay, all that is there. Now, what is being said out here is that children look at garbage as wonder. But for the elders, it's a means of survival. So it is, it's an art. You need to be very good in being able to pick the valuable items from the garbage. So in that sense, it becomes like a fine art, which you develop over a period of time with practice. Okay, which is why garbage for them is gold. When they sell the whatever items they can find, it fetches them their daily bread. It helps them ensure there is a roof over their head, even if it is a leaking roof during the monsoon season. But for a child, it is even more. Why is it even more for a child? That's because I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note, Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging. Scrounging means to continue to look, because there is hope to get even more. For there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means for their parents, to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it's a means of survival. So children, they scrounge because there is hope of finding silver coins, etc. For elders, it's a means of survival. But nevertheless, it is also a fine art, because only if you know the art of scrounging, you'll be able to discover and find the valuable items from within the garbage, because garbage, as I said, is essentially discarded by people like you and me. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. Okay, so he likes the game of tennis. I go inside when no one is around. He admits the gatekeeper lets me use the swing. Not to play the game, but to use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. So today when she sees him, he is wearing shoes, but they are kind of looking a little strange. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they are discarded, shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them, does not bother him. Now this is very significant, and it operates at different levels. I'll explain how. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true, but the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. This is my own interpretation. We are talking of three different levels out here. We are talking of Sahib, we are talking about his shoes which have a hole in them, and then we are talking about the tennis game. Okay, for those of you who follow tennis, tennis has two words. One is love, the second is advantage. Okay, if you understand tennis, uh, the irony with love, even though he says, I like the game, he says, I love the game, he says, I like the game. Okay, even though there is the thing like love in this particular game, there will never be acceptance for a boy like Sahib, a Alam, as far as tennis is concerned. Okay, the word advantage, again, it's ironical because there is really no advantage for Sahib out here. The shoe with the hole is a step up for the boy who actually walked barefoot. Definitely. Instead of walking barefoot, at least he has a shoe, even though it has a hole in it, right? In contrast to the rich boy who has discarded them. For the rich boy, this is garbage. He can no longer use them. But for another boy, it's actually something which he can still use, even if it has a hole in it. So it is a step up for Sahib. It's a step down for the rich boy, but it will be many steps in the ladder before he can reach the level of the rich boy. The rich boy is completely out of reach for Sahib, who has to make do with this discarded shoe which has a hole in it. Okay, so I hope you are able to understand the contrast which this kind of a paragraph is trying to bring out. This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. वो जो milkman लेके जाते हैं ना, बड़ा सा canister. I now work at a tea stall. So he has moved away from doing rag picking. He is now getting a fixed salary, but उसमें भी एक catch है. He says, pointing in the distance, I am paid 800 rupees on all my meals. So you see, all his food is taken care of, plus he also gets a fixed salary. But does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. As a rag picker, he could go anywhere, he could go at any time. There was a sense of independence and freedom and carefree kind of an attitude that Sahib-e-Alam had. That seems to be now lost now that he's employed somewhere where he's getting a regular monthly salary of 800 rupees. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag that he would carry as a rag picker, so lightly on his shoulder. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. So she has now punned on the word Sahib. Sahib is generally used for the master. So she says Sahib is no longer his own master because now he's employed with the tea shop owner. So he has to do his bidding. So he's an employee. He has traded his freedom as a rag picker for the monthly fixed salary that he will get at the tea stall and assured meals that he will get every day. So it's like a safety net that he has done. So he has got the salary, he has got the money at the end of every month, but he no longer is a free man. He's no longer his own master. He cannot no longer decide कि I will go there and do rag picking today. आज मेरा mood नहीं है, आज मैं नहीं जाऊंगा. He can no longer decide that. He is now an employee of the tea stall. I hope you understood this particular story. Let's now move to the next one. Is Sahib happy working at the tea stall? Explain. We will do all this question and answers, but think about it. All the points that I have now just mentioned, you need to talk about all that. I mean, he gets that assured salary and assured meals, but that sense of happiness, that sense of carefreeness is no longer there. Whew. The next story comes from Firozabad, which is a small town in Uttar Pradesh known for making bangles. Okay, the protagonist of the second story is a boy called Mukesh. Okay, Mukesh insists on being his own master. So she has linked it with Sahib, and how the first story ends, the second story begins. Okay, with the same concept of master. I will be a motor mechanic, he announces. Okay, so that's what she's talking about in this second story. Do you know anything about cars? I ask. I will learn to drive a car, he answers, looking straight into my eyes. His dream looms like a mirage. Mirage is something which is not real, which is only, you imagine it is there. Amidst the dust of streets that fill his town, Firozabad, famous for its bangles. Every other family in Firozabad is engaged in making bangles. It is a center of India's glass blowing industry where families have spent generations working around furnaces, welding glass, making bangles for all the women in the land, it seems. So it's a place where bangles are manufactured, but bangles, while they look beautiful, what goes into making the bangles is not so beautiful. It involves heat, it involves light, it furnaces, it needs hours and hours of sitting there around a furnace, around making those bangles. So if you have seen children, a large number of child labor which is employed in the country in making bangles, you see for hours at end they sit, so their posture becomes completely distorted as a result of being engaged in this bangle making industry. So this is how it's a darker side of the bangle industry. Mukesh's family is among them. None of them know that it is illegal for children like him to work in the glass furnaces with high temperatures. Child labor is banned. Okay, it is not something which should be done. In dingy cells, in dark little rooms, cells, not even rooms, without air and light. And that's what, they don't get any vitamin D, they don't get any kind of space to move around. They have to sit like this and keep doing that. I've seen that in Hyderabad, in the old city part of Hyderabad, where there used to be a lot of child labor used to make those beautiful Hyderabadi bangles. I had written articles on it and saying that, each of these Hyderabadi bangles, and that's a line I had used, actually have the blood and sweat of children. And I think it's so unfair, that people gift it to other people, but on each of those bangles, there is the blood and tears and sweat of child. They're all, each bangle in that sense is a story of a stolen childhood. A childhood that we in India and everywhere around who wears those bangles have actually snatched from a child or many children. Which is why child labor in that sense is an extremely unfair thing to do to any child for that matter. Here we are talking about Mukesh, that the law, if enforced, could get him and all those 20,000 children out of the hot furnaces where they slog their daylight hours. All day they sit there and do that. Slog means work very hard, often losing the brightness of their eyes. Their eyesight goes for a toss because all the time they are in dark, dingy kind of condition. So, your eye actually never sees the sunrise and the sunset. Mukesh's eyes beam as he volunteers to take me home, which he proudly says is being rebuilt. We walk down stinking lanes, smelly lanes choked with garbage, past homes that remain hovels. Hovels is essentially a dirty house that is not fit for habitation. But he is feeling proud that, the house is being rebuilt. With crumbling walls, wobbly doors, doors which can actually, can collapse any moment. No windows, crowded with families of humans and animals coexisting in a primeval state. There would be animals, there could be cows and buffaloes and goats and hens, and humans also coexisting. He stops at the door of one such house, bangs a wobbly iron door with his foot and pushes it open. Daya ki tarah, CID ke daya ki tarah, and pushes it open. We enter a half-built shack. Now, shack is again something which is not even a proper habitation, almost like a hut. In one part of it, thatched with dead grass, is a firewood stove over which sits a large vessel of sizzling spinach leaves. On the ground, in large aluminium platters, are more chopped vegetables. A frail young woman, frail means someone who is an extremely weak person, is cooking the evening meal for the whole family. Through eyes filled with smoke, she smiles. She is the wife of Mukesh's elder brother. Not much older in years, she has begun to command respect as the bahu, as the daughter-in-law of the house, already in charge of 3 men, her husband, Mukesh, and their father. When the older man enters, she gently withdraws behind the broken wall and brings her veil. वो होता है ना, घूंघट पहनते हैं in North Indian families and households. So that's what. So you are getting a sense of the family life out there. As custom demands, daughters-in-law must veil their faces before male elders. In this case, the elder is an impoverished, that is again a very weak, poor man, bangle maker. Despite long years of hard labor, first as a tailor, then as a bangle maker. So he tried to earn a livelihood as a tailor, did not succeed, and came back to his family profession of making bangles. He has failed to renovate a house, send his two sons to school. All he has managed to do is to teach them what he knows, the art of making bangles. So both Mukesh and his brother do that. That's what their father has done. It is his karam. Karam means his destiny, says Mukesh. Grandmother who has watched her own husband go blind with the dust from polishing the glass of bangles. So you see the eyesight which gets affected. So Mukesh's grandfather had got affected. Can a God-given lineage ever be broken? Means something, they think that, this whole profession of bangle making is something which has been given by God. God wanted them to make bangles. So that's the kind of justification they do in order to justify what they're doing over generations. Grandfather to Mukesh's father to Mukesh now and his brother. Whew. Born in the caste of bangle makers. So the bangle making is almost like a caste. ये पूरी जात जो हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, is involved in the job occupation of bangle making. They have seen nothing but bangles in the house, in the yard, in every other house, every other yard, every street in Firozabad. So that city, every street is known only for bangles. Spirals of bangles, sunny gold, paddy green, royal blue, pink, purple, every color born out of the 7 colors of the rainbow, line mounds in unkempt yards. Unkempt again means dirty, filthy places, are piled on 4-wheeled handcarts pushed by young men along the narrow lanes of the shanty town. Now, shanty town is basically a deprived area on the outskirts of a town. So while bangles are meant to provide joy to a woman, here in Firozabad, it's there in every street, and it doesn't kind of, it only conveys a tale of misery, because it kind of, make them impoverished. It does not, the man has not even managed to build a house for himself. The grandfather lost eyesight. So, everything is about the art and craft of bangle making is extremely negative. There is really nothing to, praise it as something a great profession, right? And especially when children are involved in that profession as child labor. And in dark hutments next to lines of flames of flickering oil lamps sit boys and girls with their fathers and mother welding pieces of colored glass into circles of bangles. So their eyes are more adjusted to the dark than to the light outside. This line is very important. That is why they often end up losing their eyesight before they become adults. This line is extremely important. Please note it, write it, just mark it with a pencil in your textbook. Okay. So, the circles of bangles, it's like a circle. Generations after generations do that. They are almost like trapped. They are trapped inside this circle. They are not able to break out of it. Mukesh wants to do it. He wants to become a motor mechanic. He hopes to break through the circle of the bangle industry in Firozabad. So that sense, the circle of the bangle is like a metaphor of a trap for each one of those people who are employed in the glass making industry, bangle making industry in Firozabad. So please make a note of the circles of bangles as a metaphor for the trap that these children are there in, for each person who is there in Firozabad. Savita, a young girl in a drab means a very dull pink dress. Pink is a bright color, but here it's a very dull pink. Sits alongside an elderly woman soldering pieces of glass. As her hands move mechanically like the tongs of a machine, the machine parts, I wonder if she knows the sanctity of the bangles she helps make. Sanctity because bangles are associated with a married woman, right? So which is why the word sanctity has been used out here. She helps make. It symbolizes an Indian woman's suhag, that is marital status, auspiciousness in marriage. It will dawn on her suddenly one day when her head is draped with a red veil, because red is the color of the sari that they wear at marriage time. Her hands dyed red with henna, mehndi, and red bangles rolled onto her wrists. She will then become a bride. Like the old woman beside her who became one many years ago, she still has bangles on her wrist but no light in her eyes. Ek waqt ser bhar khana bhi nahi khaya. So she says she has not eaten anything, enjoyed one full meal in her entire lifetime. So her voice has no joy. That's what she has reaped. Her husband, an old man with a flowing beard, says, I know nothing except bangles. All I have done is make a house for a family to live in, which is not in good condition, definitely. Hearing him, one wonders if he has achieved what many have failed in their lifetime. He has a roof over his head, right? Many people don't even have that. The cry of not having money to do anything except carry on the business of making bangles, not even enough to eat, rings in every home. The young men echo the lament of their late elders. That is, the complaint, the fact that अरे कुछ भी नहीं है, इससे क्या होता है, but they continue because, as I said, they're trapped in that business because they don't know anything else to do. Little has moved with time, it seems, in Firozabad. Years of mind-numbing toil have killed all initiative and the ability to dream. They are not able to dream of doing anything else. Why not organize yourselves into a cooperative? I ask a group of young men who have fallen into the vicious circle of middlemen. Vicious means it's a trap. The middlemen, because they make the bangles, they will sell it to the middlemen. The middlemen will go and sell it to the shopkeepers. So it's a circle because they get only what the middleman gives them. Whereas it's the middleman who sells it at a higher price and makes more money in the bargain. Even if we get organized, so cooperative means that they themselves will become the producers as well as the sellers. So in that case, they can cut out the money which they pay to the money that the middleman makes, right? Even if we get organized, we are the ones who will be hauled up by the police, beaten and dragged to jail for doing something illegal. So they fear the police. They say there is no leader among them, no one who could help them see things differently. So they are very scared. So they are the thing, this is chalta hai, ye system hai, chalta hai, because doing it ourselves will actually mean more trouble. We'll need to deal with the police, etc. So the law, which is supposed to keep them safe, they're actually scared of what could possibly happen. They talk, their fathers are as tired as they are. They talk endlessly in a spiral that moves from poverty to apathy to greed and to injustice. Very powerful words. Poverty, you understand. Apathy means, there is no sense of any kind of, no one feels anything good for them. And there is a sense of apathy, ki kuch ho nahi sakta kind of thing. But there is greed, there is greed, whether it's by the middlemen, and they would also want to make more money, and to injustice, and greed could happen from the other people who would look to exploit them as well. It could be the middlemen or it could be the other agencies, and therefore there is injustice. Listening to them, I see two distinct worlds. One of the family caught in a web of poverty by the stigma of the caste in which they are born, and the other a vicious circle of the Saukar. Saukar is the moneylender, the keepers of law, that is the police, the bureaucrats, and the politicians. So these four are the exploiters. This is the kind of exploitation system into which they are born. They are born into a caste of people who make bangles, so they have to necessarily continue the same trade. They cannot break away from it and do something totally different. Okay, so these are the two vicious circles, the web of poverty and caste of bangle makers, and these people who look to exploit them. Together they have imposed the baggage on the child that he cannot put down. So it's like a heavy burden on the child, and he's burdened as a result of that. Before he's aware, children like Mukesh, he accepts it as naturally as his father did, right? To do anything else would mean to dare. That is, if you need to break out, which means you need to be a rebel, to rebel against the system and say, I will not do this, I will do something different. And daring is not part of his growing up. When I sense a flash of it in Mukesh, Mukesh is different. He's daring to dream. Okay, I'm cheered. I want to be a motor mechanic, he repeats. He will go to a garage and learn. But the garage is a long way from his home, from Firozabad. I will walk. So, there is no concept of distance. He knows, she tells him that it's far off, but he says, I will walk. So he wants to make that journey. He wants to dare to break out of this vicious web and do something different. But the garage is a long way from his home. I will walk. He insists. Do you also dream of flying a plane? She says, which may seem a little ridiculing at times, right? He's suddenly silent. No, he says, staring at the ground. She's talking about the sky, but he's staring at the ground, which means that he does not dare to dream of a plane. He's okay with things on the ground, which is a motor mechanic's job. In a small murmur, there is an embarrassment that has not yet turned to regret. He is content to dream of cars that he sees hurtling down, that is going at high speed, the streets of his town. Few airplanes fly over Firozabad, right? So there are few planes which fly over Firozabad. This is the use of an alliteration as a literary device. F, F, F. Okay. So with this, we come to the end. I will write the question and answers also. I will also already put the notes out here so that you get a clear idea about this story. The idea out here is to ensure that you're completely comfortable as far as your English paper is concerned for CBSE Class 12. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's all very clear. These are simple stories, but definitely you need to get an explanation so that it doesn't kind of get confusing. As far as Mukesh is concerned, my last word, he does not dream of the plane, but there is a dream beyond his vision, definitely. That is something which he definitely does. Thank you very much for watching. Tata. Bye-bye.